we have no we're being excluded, we're being erased. But for those who are beneficiaries of power and privilege, it's very difficult. That's why white people don't want to deal, like Brittany was talking about. They don't want to deal with the core of racism. They just keep on telling you, I'm not like the others. Or they tell you, I was not a slave of my great-grandfather. But you're benefiting from the benefits, from the property and the wealth that came from slaving us. So, guys, I go back to the point. If you like the smell of freedom that we exude in our meetings, that we exude through our writing. No, but explain to me, why do they come to the meetings otherwise? No, you might laugh, but I want you to think about it. It's very serious. Yeah? Hopefully you are coming to learn how to give up your privilege. And let me tell you, it's going to be even more difficult than giving up oppression. So, these are the two challenges that I'm putting to you. For us as women, we have to reconstruct and reconfigure our identities, remove them, disembed them from feudalism and nationalism. Nationalism has defined our politics as an ideology of compromise, you know, and of altruism. We must give it up, that kind of identity. And we must craft the new identity, because human beings are always creating the future. And we mustn't be afraid of becoming Africans in new ways. And people say, oh, but I don't want to be white. No, you don't have to be white. Who wants to be white? Who wants to be Western? Let's formulate and envision the most beautiful parts of ourselves and use those to recreate ourselves. And we must leave the past. We must understand it. We must recognize it. But we must put it in the museum. We've got the history books. We've got all the detail. Oh, yes, all the artifacts. Now, it's time to move into the future. Please. That's what the only two things I wanted to say.
Merci beaucoup, les trois intervenantes, qui, à partir de leur expérience, pour certaines, ce sont des expériences qui datent des années 1980, pour Isabelle, beaucoup plus récentes. Mais nous avons énormément appris. Je pense que ce sont des interventions très stimulantes. Je m'en rends compte à travers votre réaction. Ce que je retiens de ces interventions, c'est que face aux menaces, contre le féminisme, contre le genre, contre nos corps, contre nos vies, l'esprit de résistance est toujours extrêmement fort. C'est un esprit de résistance qui a jalonné le mouvement des femmes et le mouvement féministe depuis sa naissance jusqu'à maintenant, et Patricia a mis beaucoup l'accent sur l'avenir. Beaucoup d'entre vous représentent l'avenir, surtout pour l'Afrique. Donc, il va être extrêmement intéressant pour nous d'échanger entre les panélistes et l'audience, de parler de résistance quotidienne et sur un plus long temps, de parler aussi de mobilisation, d'engagement, de stratégie. Comment nous allons faire face au conservatisme, face aux questions qui minent le mouvement féministe ou féminin lui-même, face aux problèmes qui sont soulevés par le conservatisme des femmes elles-mêmes. Quelle stratégie devons-nous mettre en place? Je vais juste aborder une petite question qui me tient beaucoup à cœur et Isabelle en a un peu parlé. Au temps du numérique, comment la solidarité et l'engagement doivent s'organiser? Je me rappelle, il y a une vingtaine ou une trentaine d'années, quand on ne faisait pas les réunions en ligne et que la solidarité ne se limitait pas à faire des pétitions, nous étions solidaires parce que nous connaissions les personnes que nous soutenions. Nous pouvions mettre un nom et un visage quand une amie iranienne était accusée et devait être lapidée. Nous connaissions son nom, nous savions qu'elle était mère, qu'elle était militante, et ça nous avait beaucoup motivés, non seulement pour la soutenir nous-mêmes, mais pour construire une solidarité autour d'elle. Ce que nous avions fait pour une cinéaste tchadienne, je ne sais pas si vous vous rappelez son nom, qui avait été l'objet d'une fatwa, parce qu'elle avait fait un film sur les mutilations génitales féminines. Donc, c'était des personnes que nous connaissions, certaines étaient nos amies, nous connaissions leurs enfants, nous pouvions mettre un nom sur... Je me demande aujourd'hui, quand les personnes, les féministes et les non-féministes, échangent en ligne et ne se connaissent pas, quels sont les contenus et les stratégies quand on ne s'est jamais vu, quand on ne peut pas dire à l'autre, mais tu sais, je t'aime, donc je vais te soutenir. C'est une question qui me préoccupe beaucoup. Donc, je laisse la parole à la salle. Donc, nous avons du temps. Vous pouvez parler. Les panélistes vous répondront. S'il n'y a pas d'intervention, je pense qu'il nous reste quand même quelques minutes. Je leur redonnerai la parole. Elles pourront développer certaines idées. Merci. Sylvia Kamale.
Thank you very much for such an insightful, fantastic panel. My question goes to Sonia. Because you had very limited time, I want you to elaborate and explain in more detail, a bit more detail, the point that you made that progressive liberals misunderstand, don't know the extent of the anti-gender movement. Just what it consists of so that we are very clear.
Well, this has a very long history. Huh? Once again, I'm taking aback, despite myself, to my 50 years of being in the job of being a feminist. At least in Latin America, but I suspect this applies elsewhere. When I became a feminist in the 70s, coming back to Brazil after Mozambique, I came devoted myself. I was firmly engaged that I wanted to do feminist politics in Brazil at the ground level. And I was born in Rio and I moved to Recife, which is a town in the northeast, then the poorest area of the country. Not anymore, but at the point in time it was. And there we have created one of the first feminist collectives of the country in 1978, around 1978. And this was the beginning of Brazilian. We were all progressives, we were left-wingers. Some of us have come out of even connections with the armed struggles that preceded that against the dictatorship. And we engaged in that process, bringing up feminist epistemic and political insurgencies. And what we would hear from our companions in the struggle for democratization is that, no, girls, this is really very important. However, we have to wait for after the revolution. You imagine what would have happened if you have seriously heard that advice? Nothing. Huh? So this, with respect to women's and gender inequality, when it moves to sexuality matters, is still much worse. Much worse. Because sexuality in left-wing thinker, and here I'm thinking of the masters, of Marx, of all of them, sexuality was, and particularly in left-wing politics of the early 20th and even post-mid-20th century, it's a frivolity. It's a bourgeois problem. Huh? It does not pertain to whole of humanity. It does not pertain to the proletariat. The proletariat does not have sexuality, okay? It's a very strange conception from my point of view, as sexual humans, huh? Like robots or what? But then there's, and this translated into politics where socialism was in power. Homosexuals were extensively chased in Russia, in China, criminalized until very, very recently. There's not much evidence about gays, homosexuals of the time being enclosed in re-education camps in Mozambique, but there are cases that are coming into light. But the incarceration in those camps of sex workers was extensive when I was there. I have not been to the camps, but it was a process. We heard all the time that sex workers were being re-educated. And not just sex workers, women that behaved badly, so to speak, because of her sexual mores. So I'm coming to that because I think there's a sort of myopia in relation to what is happening now. But that myopia is grounded in this deep epistemic problem that we need to address. And let me just give you one example why this is so critical. One of the most important actors in anti-gender politics today is a Spanish platform named Citizen Go. Have you ever heard of that? It's a main platform of anti-gender, anti-abortion attacks. For example, they did a campaign that led to the attack on Judith Butler in Brazil in 2017, which was a very vicious attack. Her effigy was burned as a witch in a public protest, which is totally colonial, huh? Like it's really like Inquisition at work, huh? In 2017. Citizen Go is present in Africa. It has offices in Kenya. It has offices in Nigeria. It's spreading its presence in the continent. It does campaigns around gender and sexuality and reproductive rights issues in Africa. Has had success with that. Citizen Go last year, during the month of June, which is Pride Month, they spread out a meme, a poster in the internet with the rainbow colors, with all the citations of famous Marxist theorists and leaders on homosexuality. Horrible quotations. Starting to Marx, down to Salvador Allende, who was one of my most loved leaders of the Latin American left. Because one piece of my formation before going to Mozambique was Chile, in the transition towards the Allende regime. So Allende said it many times that homosexuality was the disease that needed to be treated. And the ultra-right is building upon those discourses to make their campaigns today, as we speak here. This is spread out in the internet. You go to Citizen Go site and you're going to see those discourses spread there, and they are going everywhere, which is a way not just to be viciously attack gender, LGBT rights, etc., but it's also a bait to capture progressive people that are in doubt about these matters. And in the case of Brazil now, and I'm talking Brazil because we have experienced 4 years of an ultra-right regime. Bolsonaro was the very first ultra-right leader elected in a political process where anti-gender politics was very, very critical and central. This was not the case of Orbán. He used anti-gender politics afterwards. The other one elected was Milei in 2003, and before that, Meloni. So Bolsonaro was really pioneer. What Trump is doing now, what Trump is doing now is sort of mimicking Bolsonaro. So in Brazil today, the ultra-right definitely hates gender and everything, gender as this package. And the left in power is entirely afraid, is panicked with gender. They don't want to talk about it because they are afraid of how the ultra-right is going to react to it. So I have been making jokes that who's afraid of gender, in the case of Brazil, is the Lula government, quite evidently. So it's okay, Sylvia. You think I responded to your question? This is as much of the field that I can do.
Est-ce qu'il y a encore des questions pour... Est-ce qu'il y a des questions soit pour Patricia ou bien pour Isabelle? Parce que nous a signalé qu'on n'a pratiquement plus de temps. Il n'y a pas de questions apparemment. Donc, je vais clore la session. Je vous remercie pour avoir écouté les trois présentatrices, avoir réagi et poser des questions. Merci et bon appétit.
Allô. Oui, merci à tous. Merci à tous. Alors, on ne va pas déjeuner tout de suite. Oui, on a une leçon juste avant la pause déjeuner. Alors, c'est une leçon par Maram Gay. Et je vais pouvoir accueillir pour la modération Fatou Sow. Merci.
toute l'équipe organisatrice de ce bel événement. Merci beaucoup, professeur, pour le parcours que vous avez, pour nous avoir accompagnés, nous tous. Merci beaucoup pour avoir impacté autant de personnes, nos sociétés, les universités, les universitaires africaines. Fatou nous a inspirés, elle nous a montré les vrais défis et le saut épistémologique nécessaire dans les sciences sociales en Afrique. L'importance de rompre avec les paradigmes actuels, largement inspirés par des penseurs et des recherches venant d'ailleurs d'autres sociétés. Elle nous a montré l'importance de considérer la science comme une construction dans laquelle les paradigmes mobilisés doivent s'inspirer du contexte, doivent être situés socialement et historiquement. Merci beaucoup, professeur, pour la souveraineté scientifique que vous avez incarnée, l'innovation dans la recherche et d'avoir problématisé les nombreuses préoccupations des femmes. Merci beaucoup d'être la mère fondatrice de la sociologie. Fatou, il y a eu sociologie. On a beaucoup parlé des pères fondateurs, c'est la mère fondatrice pour nous ici. Merci d'être cette belle personne humaine et de nous montrer qu'il faut croire en soi, que l'africaine est belle, que nos colliers de perles, nos cheveux nappis, nos pagnes, nos boubous sont beaux et sexy. Merci pour tout ça et d'avoir démontré par l'exemple l'importance de construire un espace privé démocratique pour notre bien-être, pour notre santé mentale, pour notre épanouissement, pour notre développement personnel. J'ai jamais été aussi fière de m'appeler Fatou. Merci. Merci. Et au-delà de tout ça, vous avez montré que la finesse, la résilience, le courage, l'engagement, entre autres, sont des valeurs qui peuvent faire vaciller le patriarcat. Le patriarcat dont Maram va nous entretenir. Elle va nous faire une leçon sur la panique du patriarcat face au mouvement féministe radical. Maram, merci de nous rejoindre. Maram est professeure titularisée en littérature d'Afrique et de sa diaspora à l'université de East Caroline aux États-Unis. Elle a aussi récemment été nommée Distinguished Professor de la Thomas Rivers Études internationales. Ses recherches sont sur l'art verbal des femmes. Elle est chercheure activiste et est la fondatrice d'une grande plateforme aux États-Unis qui regroupe 3200 femmes sénégalaises vivant aux États-Unis. Maram, donc vous avez la parole pour cette leçon. Merci.
Alors, jërëjëf, je vais parler en anglais. On passe d'une langue coloniale à une autre. Mais avant de parler en anglais, je vais d'abord m'adresser à ma professeure Fatou Sow et pour dire que je suis tellement heureuse d'être là que des fois je me gratte pour me dire si c'est un rêve ou non, parce que j'aurais raté cet événement qui est un événement pivotal dans la vie des féministes du Sénégal. Te célébrer quand tu es là devant nous, pour te dire combien on t'aime. Je voudrais aussi remercier le professeur Achille Mbembe. Le jeudi, il y avait une femme qui performait, qui disait des mots. Dañoo laal suñu xol yi. Dañoo laal lalake. Et je vais traduire par vous avez touché à ce qui ne devait pas être touché. Et ça ne veut pas dire que c'est négatif, c'est positif, parce que vous avez touché à une géante. Elle est notre cœur. Vous avez touché notre cœur. Et c'est pourquoi nous bougeons. So I wanted to thank him because he has touched our heart by wanting to celebrate Professor Fatou Sow, who's so dear to us. As a griot descendant, I'm into performance, but I'm also into theorizing from our concept, the local concepts, to read patriarchy, because I don't think we talk about patriarchy enough. And as a militant feminist, I stay here at the intersection of my theorizing, but also of my activism on the ground. As somebody who's involved in Senegalese feminist fight, last weekend, I was fighting in the streets of Dakar against people who invited Tariq Ramadan to speak in Senegal. So this lesson, I like the idea of a lesson, because I think in English we say keynote, but I don't think it transmits this idea of teaching and sharing from a position of authority. Are we ready? Guy? Guy, are we ready? Anyway. Guy? So I'm really happy to have followed the session with Patricia McFadden and Sonia and my other sister from Canada, simply because I stand here as the feminist daughter of Patricia McFadden in what I'm going to be saying. So bear with me. In December 2024, a small digital flyer appeared on the Senegalese social media sphere. It had a purple background, and two hands broke their chains at the bottom. The words, like daggers, were sharp, brief, and bold. Freedom Day, dress code, new, Tatunen. December 31st, 2024. Below the announcement was written, contre la culture du viol, pour l'application du protocole de Maputo et pour qu'on nous foute la paix. Hashtag jungle patriarcat, hashtag se libérer. Against rape culture, for the application of the Maputo protocol, so that we are fucking left alone. Hashtag circumcised patriarchy, hashtag free oneself. No venue or time was designated, and there were no organization listed as the convener or sponsor of such a demonstration. At first, people thought it was a joke, but as everyone talked, it gathered momentum and became the main news around the country. From social media to television shows, to interviews with influencers and imams and other religious leaders, everyone had a say and pointed at feminists as the only ones who could envision such a provocation. Some women's organizations had press conferences to castigate feminists and present them as threat to the nation. People asked for the arrest of feminists or their flogging, or both. An imam called for the gang rape of feminists by prisoners. Jamra, the Islamic morality police, whose primary agenda seems to be a constant attack on women, sued 3 feminists, accusing them of being the instigators of the planned naked protest. Such violence invokes the habitual reaction to women's complaints. Focus is put on how they complain and not what they are complaining about. It also conveys patriarchal anger, anxiety, and disbelief that Senegalese feminists had reached a level of radicalization. I equate this violent backlash to patriarchal panic and likening it to Jafur, a trance-like condition that occurs when a soul eater has attacked a resilient soul, causing him to lose control of his occult soul-eating ability and show his real face by confessing to his predation. In the popular belief of some Senegalese ethnic group, such as the Serer and the Wolof, Dum is a soul eater, are humans who are endowed with the occult ability to eat others. And that's what patriarchy does. By sucking their souls, making them sick and dying of a sudden, unexplainable death. Dum is a type of witchcraft. Once the person is dead, some believe that the soul eater goes to their grave, digs them up, and eats them. These beliefs are found in several West African communities. For example, among the Hausa, the Maye can eat the souls of the victim just like a Dum. But there is a moment in a soul eater's power where he loses power and recklessly confesses to their predation in a trance-like moment. This episodic condition is called Jafur in Wolof. Góoru Sénégal dañuy Jafur. In Senegalese popular parlance, Jafur also refers to the reaction of a person who panics faced with an imminent or perceived loss of power or control. I use occult anthropophagy or soul eating as a theoretical framework to unveil the workings of Senegalese patriarchy and Jafur, to read the signs of patriarchal panic and maybe, just maybe, the upcoming demise of patriarchy in the face of determined radical feminists in Senegal. We don't talk enough about patriarchy, yet it regulates our lives and interactions. Bell Hooks states that patriarchy is the most threatening social disease assaulting the male body and spirit. End of quote. And that patriarchy is the social political system that insists that males are inherently dominating, superior to everything and everyone, deemed weak, especially females, and endowed with the right to dominate and rule over the weak to maintain that dominance through various forms of psychological terrorism and violence. End of quote. In her explanation of how patriarchy is inculcated in children, she points to how women are sometimes the reinforcers of patriarchal tenets. I quote, "We need to highlight the role that women play in perpetuating patriarchal culture so that we will recognize patriarchy as a system that women play in perpetuating, and we recognize patriarchy as a system that women and men support equally, even if men receive more rewards from the system." End of quote. She continues, "Women can be as wedded to patriarchy as men." And that's something that I think McFadden talked a little bit about. This definition grounds, I don't think my mic is working. It is? Okay. This definition grounds the role that women play in their victimization by reinforcing patriarchal power dynamics. Therefore, my theorizing of Jafur as patriarchal panic does not exclude some women's reaction to what Senegalese patriarchy considers as acute threat to its toxic reign, radical militant feminism. The concept of patriarchal panic was put forward by Sonia Johnson in 1979 in her historic speech at the National Sociological Association entitled "Patriarchal Panic, Sexual Politics in the Mormon Church," causing the LSD leadership to start disciplinary actions against her. Johnson writes, "The reaction of the church fathers to the women's movement and women's demand for equal rights has produced fearful and fascinating phenomena. She reads the increase in birthright in Utah in one decade as evidence of real patriarchal panic." So literally men panicked and went home to make babies. She stated that every meeting of church leaders focused where men liked them best, made to nurture, husband and children, housebound, financially and emotionally dependent, occupationally immature, politically naive, obedient, subordinate, submissive, somnambulant, and bearing much of the heavy and uncredited labor upon their uncomplaining shoulders. Something similar is happening in Senegal, where patriarchy continues to see and treat women as accessories to men. Recently, we witnessed an aggressive attempt to push women in the home through political and religious rhetoric that reinforces patriarchal tenets. Women's rights are eroding, rape and feminicides have increased, causing feminists to revert to more radical actions, such as the intended naked protests of December 2024. Men's fear of loss of privilege causes them to viciously attack and vilify feminists, whom they view as the biggest threat to patriarchy's enduring hold. As Hooks remind us clearly, we cannot dismantle a system as long as we engage in collective denial of its impact on our lives. Patriarchy requires male dominance by any means necessary, hence it supports, promotes, and condones sexist violence. Senegalese patriarchy is in a state of panic mode that mimics the state of Jafur because of its dominance is threatened by radical militant feminism. In the wall of linguistic popular imagination, a Dom is a predator who hunts, corners, and destroys souls to appease his anthropophagic pulsion. Dom sabotages the lives of its victims and sees them as one and only one thing: praise. For example, a Dom is said to be more attracted to young babies, young bride, pregnant women, the newly circumcised boys, or someone who is successful and whose future is promising. He stalks, maligns, and tricks to subdue this prey. While hunting for souls, Dom often shapeshifts into an animal such as vulture, an owl, a bat, etc. There is no specific proof that Dom exists, but I'm just using this as a theoretical framework. But the real soul eater is patriarchy, which consumes the soul of women and is passed down to both males and females. Applying the concept of soul eating to patriarchy subverts the notion often attributed to women whose conditions of precarity, the reason for them being accused of witchcraft, are the consequences of patriarchal soul eating. Here in Senegal, actually, most Dom are women. Yes, most Dom are women. Exactly. Since men inherit patriarchal privilege and ferociously refuse to lose it, this subversion allows for a theorizing of patriarchy's predation and reaction in the face of radical feminist resistance as men and patriarchal women bond together to solidify patriarchal hegemony by attacking feminists. In what follow, I will delineate how Senegalese patriarchy preys on women, sabotages them, tricks them, plunders their bodies, and consumes their soul through different mechanisms and formats. The socialization of girls, for example, as prey to the patriarchy, starts in the family where they are groomed and prepared for patriarchy's slaughterhouse. Bell Hooks recalls how her parents reinforced patriarchal socialization in their household. And this reminds me of the previous lesson of care and who cares for who and how care is assigned to women for the most part. As their daughter, I was taught that my role to serve, to be weak, to be free from the burden of thinking, to caretake and to nurture others. On the other hand, my brother was taught that it was his role to be served, to provide, to be strong, to think, strategize, and plan, and to refuse to caretake or nurture others. End of quote. Fatoumata Bernardet Sonko echoes something similar in Senegal, where she says the valorization of the masculine and the devaluing of the feminine attaches more importance to the social professional success of boys, whereas girls are groomed to be homemakers. End of quote. In Senegal, most families love girls because they are not the preferred gender. Their presence is barely welcome. It is just tolerated. And because they are here against parents' will, they are prepared to be sucked in. Even when families invest money, time, and social values to raise girls, their primary aspiration for their daughters is to see them married. The family is the first faction of patriarchy where the sucking of the soul of girls starts. Their bodies and movements are policed to make them appealing and palatable to the patriarchy through marriage, where their souls are sucked in servitude to a man and his family. McFadden compares human abuse of animals to how patriarchy treats women. I quote, "We bring them into our abode, domesticate them, exploit them, brutalize them, buy and sell them, and eventually murder them and consume them as meat." So here I want us to imagine women as meat for the patriarchy. The same violence we exact on animals is extended to women and enslaved people, end of quote. In fact, at the wedding here in Senegal, the family of the bride asked for her bones, yaxam lala laaj. A literal injunction for her husband and his family to consume her girl and return only her remains, the bones. Women are buttered up with concepts like muñ, which means patience, jonge, which is seduction, I would say, sutura, which is discretion, gat tank, don't go anywhere, gat lamiñ, don't say anything, déggal sa jëkkër, listen to your husband, tarbiyu, worship him, toppatoo, take care of him, woyofal ni mbaxana, light as a hat, liggéeyu ndey añib doom, a mother's work is lunch for the children, meaning that women have to suffer to create successful children. Sëy ba dee, so be married until you die. And my favorite, the current one, Dalinkoor, which is the ultimate sëykat, a rare bird that will take on anything and everything from the patriarchy. In tandem with the family, the state oppresses women by maintaining the laws that discriminate against them, such as the family code. The age of marriage for girls is 16, when for boys it's 18. Women are not head of household. Children who are born out of wedlock cannot search for their fathers. And as Fatou Sow, and there seemed to be actually an unwillingness to empower women because it is assumed, as Fatou Sow says, that women will take over if given all these rights. Senegal has signed all kinds of international conventions, such as the Maputo Protocol, which gives women the right to abortion, yet those conventions are not applied, and abortion is denied. The law criminalizing rape is passed, but it drags to be applied for. And we have to actually stop and remember that this law was actually passed. The law, until 2020, in Senegal, rape was not a crime. So I think we seem to forget that it's only 4 years ago, literally, that we had this law. And women and girls who are pregnant because of rape are not allowed abortion. By not allowing abortion, and even in cases of rape and incest, the state is forcing women to carry pregnancies they did not desire, on top of the violation of their bodies through forced sex. They must endure the abuses of the patriarchy and the state by caring for that baby without much help from the institution that imposed this undesired motherhood on them. Women's reproductive labor is taken for granted, as epitomized by slogans like Kude Sayai Jurat. So if you die, your mother to another baby, which actually was a slogan during some political address in Senegal where they were literally talking about women as machines for making babies and can make as many as we can kill. The pervasiveness of rape culture and now the many cases of feminicide testify to the plunder of the female body in Senegal. The justice system and the police disregard and dismiss women's claims of violence by sending them back to their abuser and asking them what they have done to create this anger from her husband. When one high-profile rape victim went to the gendarmerie, they told her that she talked too much. Judges are also unfair to women and seem to want to discourage them from seeking justice. One woman was told to pay back her dowry because she refused to have sex with her new husband. The state pays lip service to the women's right, and currently there is even a tendency to convey that women have had too many rights, and it is time to curtail them before they get out of hand. The low representation of women in the current government and other women entities show how the state does not consider women as part of the nation. Women's labor and organizing skills are used by male political leaders to ascend to power, but when they get there, women are incompetent to lead. Polygamy is another where patriarchy plunders female body and consumes women. It's a major institution where the patriarchal soul eating of women takes place. The new type of polygamy shows how Senegalese patriarchy considers women as object to accumulate and consume. This commodification is institutionalized because now we have a president who has 2 wives, a prime minister 2 or 3 maybe, and then we also have the head of the National Assembly has 2, and every man that I know is rushing to get 1 or 2. Men collect archetypes of women, consumes them, and actually, don't make me laugh. So polygamy has become a gluttonous accumulation of women as luxury objects that depreciate over time and according to the fancy of men. For example, during the recent political crisis, a politician brandished nonchalantly that if another politician died, his opponents would simply inherit his wives. Women are possessions that are passed down. Men marry archetypes, collecting them as they want and divorcing them at a rapid rate because to them there is an excess of women that needs to be consumed at will. Eating women. It is believed that donne work in congregation in which those who identify praise can go get help and from fellow soul eaters with the promise of a share in the kill. As McFadden states, the core of patriarchy is a solidarity that men learn and share and consolidate repeatedly among themselves so they can maintain their hold over power. It is one of the most distinctive and most persevering characteristics of patriarchy as a system. End of quote. During the high-profile rape case that opposed Adji Sarr to now our Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko, we witness men's unwavering solidarity in vilifying and plundering the female body. As both the accused camp and his opponents used Adji Sarr's body as political meat. Other men and patriarchal women defended the accused and swore that he was innocent even though they were not present with him at Sweet Beauty. But the scandal around the Facebook group Shock is the ultimate manifestation of patriarchal solidarity and men's collective consumption and plunder of the female body. Shock was a platform where men could be among themselves and under their pact of masculinity eat and cannibalize women, especially women they perceive as vulnerable, such as disabled women and other women in situations of vulnerability. As McFadden states, I quote a lot from her, they are always hunting. They are predators. Power over people cannot exist without predation. So this, I'm reminded of the rapes of Mazan, where the men were actually, the husband drugged his wife and called on other men to eat her, literally. The screenshots from the Facebook group Shock shows cannibalistic discourse. One member wrote, I quote, "Have you ever tasted albino?" End of quote. Another asked, quote, "I want to taste this one. Can somebody help me get her?" End of quote. Another boasted, and I'm sorry about this one, "If you ever had sex with a crippled woman, you would break the legs of any woman you are with next." End of quote. As a boys' club, Shock was a place where men complicitly consumed the female body. Like a congregation of donne, members were hunting, brought a prey, and shared it with the rest of the group. Even those who did not post engaged in the collective predatory consumption of the female body. They see the posts, laugh about them, get sexual highs, and reaffirm their power over women. They see and feel validated as men. Their participation as members is a silent pact to hunt someday and share their future kills. When confronted, they just said that they were joking. Patriarchal Islam is also a major culprit in the collective sucking of the souls of women in Senegal. Tamale has highlighted the imported Abrahamic religions worked hard to entrench patriarchal domination, propagate ideologies of gender inequality, and rearrange African societies in a bid to suit colonial economies, end of quote. Yet religious proselytizers are the ones who accuse feminists of importing Western ideas. And here I talk about this trend that we see now in Africa for the most part of saying that we're decolonizing, but this decolonization doesn't include depatriarchalization. So they want to decolonize, but they don't want to depatriarchalize. And this is a very embedded in coloniality, because to them when they say we're returning to Africa, the African that they're talking about exists only in their heads. Organizations like Jamra, Sàmm Jikko Yi, Ndeyu Askan Wi, and social media politicizers whose subject matters are always about women's bodies and control are fighting against laws that would extend and grant women's rights. And we see this a lot across Africa. But I also want to read the donne as a trickster, as somebody who fools people. I want to bring a question that we started talking about yesterday when somebody asked if they can be a male feminist. I actually want to do a little hulo. Hulo is a dispute maybe with someone about this idea of positive masculinity and male allies and all of those iterations that allow men to enter our spaces without doing the work to have the permission to enter those spaces. Do not also mean that it's only men. There are also the pygmies who, yes, there are also the pygmies who are actually the weapons of patriarchy, the fighting horses of patriarchy. There are other women who are fighting feminists too. I am preaching. Yes, preacher. Somebody must do that. So, Tamale noted how these influential men, who are often financed by Arab lobbies in the case of Islam, manipulate the holy texts in their bid to tame and control women. In Senegal, these men remain silent on rape and feminicide because the scavenging of women's bodies legitimizes their stance that women are at fault for men's predatory behaviors because they have failed to cover themselves, to cover their bodies and stay home, where the now Arab-centric interpretation of Islam wants to relegate them by coercing them to believe in a heavenly reward for their submission. It's interesting, in Senegal, men live happily on earth, and then we have to wait until we go to unconfirmed heaven to still be among their wives. This Imam 2.0 also profit from this war against women because they thrive on patriarchal Islam, which allows them the privileges of not working real jobs. They hustle Islam over women's bodies, the only commodity they can sell in a patriarchal society in which men are aware that they are increasingly losing power and are willing to do whatever possible to hold on to it. So, by using occult anthropophagy, I do not mean that the workings of patriarchy are often hidden. Patriarchy operates overtly and covertly. There are many aspects of it that have occult dimensions as they hide behind other forms, sometimes favorable to women on the surface, but detrimental to them at the core, because patriarchy never has women's interests in mind. Like the predatory donne, its major goal is to eventually trap and consume women. The donne is a trickster who sometimes acts like an innocent friend. In Wolof we say, "Dëmm rey la jaale la." So, yeah, the soul eater will kill you, but then come to your family and act as a sympathetic neighbor. And that's what many men do. Patriarchy functions the same. The recent communique during Ramadan, in which government companies offered to release female employees early so they could go home and cook, are one of those trickster acts. They were meant to help women, but they really did not really relegate women to the kitchen and where their physical labor is consumed. The debate about maternity leave is also another poison candy that seemingly has women's interest in mind. But it is clear that if women were given 2 years maternity leave, as suggested by one of the MPs, employers will no longer hire them. Because they are already saying that women are not good for them because they get pregnant, they take too much time caring for their babies, doing the care that men are not doing. The debate is displaced and covered under the guise of care for women and children's well-being. We know that the real issue is men's lack of contributions in the home and their failure to fulfill parental responsibilities as it comes to the care of a new baby. Breastfeeding is not an issue if employees create adequate spaces for breastfeeding mothers to pump and store milk during work hours. The burden that is making women tired is the fact that they must care for another baby, the husband, who often becomes a much heavier burden after the arrival of a real baby. Not only do husbands not help in the care of the newborn, they also demand attention from the new mother. In November 2022, President Macky Sall convened a conference on positive masculinity. Something that is very interesting because feminists have been fighting for so long to have them legitimize feminism. And positive masculinity is a foreign term, but they embraced it. But why? Because this is again another way African men jump on Western concepts that are imposed around the world, yet continue to accuse feminists of importing foreign terms. The concept of positive masculinity is the model of humans that feminists have been trying to create because in an equitable world, terms like masculinity and femininity will not be needed to categorize humans. The contradiction is that African men reject feminism because it advocates for men to lose their patriarchal privilege, yet they embrace positive masculinity because they find something comforting in it. They will keep their masculinity. Some do not mind dialing down on testosterone to make peace. In this new format, they will keep most of their privileges, but will perform positivity to trick women into believing that they have changed. But they still demand that women see them as superior beings who are doing them the favor of making sacrifice to meet them in the middle. But we know that this middle is not equitable. It is fragile because the positive masculine man can always revert to toxic ways if he feels that his efforts are not rewarded, or should he feel threatened by acute loss of privilege. This is the case when men who call themselves feminist allies say, with all the efforts I am making, you should be nicer to me. Patriarchy is a system, a cult that finds nourishment in the oppression of women and children. Masculinity is its primary tool, but submissive femininity and internalized misogyny are some of its accessorial weapons. Positive masculinity is often a fancy tool thrown to cajole men to tell them that they can keep their dominant traits, only they can soften it a little bit and make it less threatening and palatable so we can coexist with them. But I wanted to really talk about the tension between predatory patriarchy and militant feminism and what happens at that encounter. And this is where I think I wanted to also acknowledge my fellow Senegalese feminists that are in the room and the work they're doing to undo patriarchy daily. We have the pioneers who have done so much of the work, but we also have the present, those who are now descending on the field and doing the work of patriarchy and are footing most of the violence of patriarchy. Dumb also refers to someone who's not easily swayed, or someone who can see beyond what is revealed. So, and here I'm using another way of reading it. Dumb is said to possess a third eye that allows her to see what is hidden to regular humans. This definition fits feminists, who can see how patriarchy manipulates women and covertly consumes their souls because of their entrenched engagement with patriarchal aggressions, manipulation, and shape-shifting. Patricia Hill Collins states that, I quote, "One key reason that standpoints of oppressed groups are suppressed is that self-defined standpoints can stimulate resistance," end of quote. Often women who claim their agency or who do not fit the patriarchal mold of what a woman should be are accused of being witches. In this case, Deme is a radical resistance tool in the face of vicious patriarchal attacks, as seen in the award-winning short story by Wapa Diallo, a fellow feminist, and her partner, Mambuguma Jane, where the heroine, who was sexually abused, turned into a creature who eats the sexual predators and protects potential victims. So here, the soul eating of a woman is a resistance tool. For a long time, one could speak of Senegalese patriarchy that is comfortable and unchallenged. So the new generation of Senegalese feminists is radical, outspoken, swift in their rebuttal, and are internet savvy. They master tools like X, formerly Twitter, TikTok, all of them, and are forcing men to pay attention. And this new wave is diasporic. Myself, I'm one of them. And because of social media's tool, they can organize across international borders and collaborate with other feminists on the continent. They are in the media, and most importantly, and unlike the major accusations, they research traditional forms of female protest and are eager to depart from the accusation that they are westernized. They are engaged in decolonial work, not just as a fancy word, but as Tamale states, quote, returning to the annals of history to find ourselves, to become more fluent in our African cultural knowledge systems, to cultivate critical consciousness, to claim our humanity, end of quote. Unlike the general belief, naked protest is something that Westerners have copied from African women. What the reaction to the Tattoo Nain campaign revealed first is the general public's lack of awareness of African resistant practices, such as naked protest, that is found in many African communities. In her important book on naked protest, Naminata Diallo unpacks its indigeneity as a practice documented in medieval times in Africa, but also how it has been decontextualized by the West. Naked protest in Africa is about the potency of the female body, not as a sexualized object of male gaze as perceived in the West. In African belief system, the female body is a sacred site of life and its potency in the reproduction of the human species. The Senegalese popular opinion assigns this practice to the West shows how African practices have been co-opted, appropriated, then served back to Africa. By threatening to get naked in defiance of rape culture that persists in Senegal despite the recent adoption of the law criminalizing rape, Senegalese feminists reclaim what is there. Whether it is potent anymore is another debate. But no one should tell them how they should protest. The feminist announcement revealed and exposed the hard truth about how deeply ingrained the culture of rape is and how many of the entities who self-elected to regulate and police behaviors do not care about ending rape. Their main concern is to shut and get rid of feminists or women who speak against the patriarchy. Once a friend and a colleague who works on gender but does not identify as a feminist said to me, "What I find interesting in Senegal is that you all embrace the term feminism comfortably." I responded, yes, we do. Because we feel that the work to show white women that their concerns and fight are not ours and that we refuse their colonizing supremacy has been done by you and your generation. That is settled. We embrace feminism as the term and concept that best embodies our political mobilization while anchoring it in our cultural context, just like men have done with democracy, communism, Marxism, Ibadur Rahmanism, and all other that have metastasized in our societies. She paused and said, "You are right. When we hear African men talk about their Marxism, it is as if they and Karl Marx are blood brothers. Yet, nobody tells them that Marxism or socialism or democracy are foreign. As Fatou Sow states, there is nothing fixed or immutable about the definition of feminism. It varies according to context, time, and above all, the needs of individuals and groups." End of quote. This generation of feminists is radical. They embrace feminism and showcase their determination to eradicate patriarchy and their resolve to give it all. They take care of themselves, they organize and are in solidarity with each other, such as the Forum Exclusive My Feminists, the Jotaiji by my friend Leti. We also have Ndajemi by Waso, who is also present here, the Institute, the Salon du Livre, the Invisible Giant, among many other celebrations of feminist accomplishment. But I want to talk about why that is causing panic and Jafur. All of this has not gone unnoticed by the patriarchy, who shapeshifts into a hawk and watches feminists' every move and is now experiencing real panic. There are marches for the release of convicted rapists, and people are willing to die to protect someone who is accused of rape. Our current prime minister was accused of rape, and 80 people died because he called them to come out to protect him. In Wolof, Jafur refers to those who believe to have consumed the soul of others, but have encountered a soul that is either stubborn or occultly gifted, who made them lose their supernatural power, rendering them occultly impotent. The stubborn and occultly gifted victim does not have the same power as the predator, but it knows enough to bring down the predator, even as the victim may be destroyed while fighting back. Feminists are those occultly gifted prey. Jafur is a sign of saturation, excess, and shows that the predator has lost his touch, his ability to exert power over victims. What leads to this state of Jafur is because the predator was so confident in his power and ability to empower his victims that he did not foresee the victim's defense capabilities. He is taken by surprise and cannot deal with the imminency of his loss of power. When this happens, he is in a state of disbelief, coupled with panic and an attempt to cling to an assumed salvageable power. The predator comes to the realization that his power is gradually diminishing, that his victim is getting to a phase of liberation. The Demu who has gone through Jafur is powerless. He can stalk and fantasize about the victim, but he knows he has no power over her anymore. Even when men continue to victimize women, they know the system that protects them is collapsing slowly. The comments by Ustaz that that feminists should be allowed to march naked, and then police should take them to the male prison where detainees are hungry for meat and have them there, shows that patriarchal degeneration that sees women as meat but is not ashamed to say so. Jamra's lawsuit against the three feminists is representative of patriarchal panic that seeks to stop feminists before they get out of hand. No one knows how the organization determined that these three feminists were those who signed an authorization for the march unless they were tipped off by the authorities to whom the letter was submitted. So here we also see male solidarity in their congregation of Demu, who literally are trying to eat women. The religious proselytizers accept that feminists are determined to dethrone patriarchy, and their attacks are signs of patriarchal panic, as seen in a letter that American pastor sent to his Ugandan counterparts to plot for the removal of Dr. Tamale here from the law school, dean of the law school. So women who are vocal in the public sphere are labeled as transgressive, satanic, and must be annihilated. The 3 feminists who were summoned at the police were subjected to psychological intimidation in an interrogation that lasted over 10 hours and asked to demonstrate how they would have conducted the sitting. It is not only men who are showing signs of jafur or patriarchal panic. As stated earlier, patriarchy is upheld by both men and women, and it is in its stricter operations co-opts women to do its dirty job. According to Samu Jikoi, the entity that self-selected as the moral compass of the society, there is a global war against the family waged by the feminists. In a recent video, one of their members, a woman, addressed feminists as those who are intent to destroy our culture. This is a sign of panic because the family is the most fertile and breeding terrain of patriarchy, where it vampirizes women's labor and weaponizes religion to remain in power. It is interesting that they cling to the family while making sure that the family they claim to be the leaders is maintained by female labor, as epitomized in the rebranding of the Ministry of Women into the Ministry of Families and Solidarities. The concerted video appearances of Samu Jikoi, Ndeye Askanwi, and the many other women in veiled garb speak to how patriarchy utilizes women as its front warriors. But these women's unconstructed argument about how joint legal parental authority erodes the power of men and dismantles the family is like the senseless jabber that a soul eater engages in during a state of jafur. It is patriarchal panic as patriarchy tries to play all its cards in the face of militant and determined feminist mobilization. What this does also show is that patriarchy tries to categorize women into 2 camps. The good ones, who are usually veiled, and the bad ones, the dummu, who are unworthy. The sit-in did not happen. But ironically, as if their flyer was prophetic, on December 31st, 2024, Jariso, 13, was raped and killed by her neighbor. The whole country was outraged, but it did not cause a flurry of radio interviews or appearances from those who called for the arrest and rape of feminists. On March 7, 2025, Daniel Sorano vibrated with 1,200 women, all dressed in white with purple scarves. They were convened by Maimouna Astiad, a young Senegalese radical feminist and the executive director of Jigéen Senegal. March 7 commemorates the women of Nder, who on March 7, 1820, burned themselves to death rather than face rape and enslavement by the Moors. After the audience watched a performance of Aline Badara Bey's play, Nder en Flamme, Maya, as she is called, stood up on the podium. She was stoic. Her body language betrayed the determination of someone who had nothing else to lose. The title of her event was Riposte Feminist. After salutation, she declared, "If these women almost over 200 years ago, could commit the ultimate sacrifice against rape, then if today's feminists would like to strip naked in protest of rape, by God, what's the big deal? We are no longer negotiating, we are demanding our rights. Those who are saying that a woman must apply patience until death are not going to hold us anymore. At this point, we're going to talk, act, denounce. We are going to pay whatever price for this." And that was the price that McFadden was talking about earlier. Rape, incest, feminicide, torture, domestic violence, mental health. These are just the many violences on women. This is why, my fellow women, today is a day of revendication. That is why we are not singing or dancing. My speech reflects this generation's determination to dethrone patriarchy, hence its state of panic. Fatou Sow, we honor you. We see your courage and sacrifice, and we promise to carry on, to be even more resilient and bold, to be unapologetic. More importantly, we refuse to be eaten alive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam, for this very awesome talk. Thank you. Meaningful, relevant, very, very interesting, and very relevant. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Merci. Oui, allô? Ah, merci. Là, ça marche. Merci beaucoup. Donc, nous allons encore applaudir chaleureusement Maram. Merci beaucoup. Maram a utilisé des termes si puissants pour analyser les résistances masculines. Les termes de diaphore. C'est si puissant, mais ça caractérise les résistances masculines et la violence qui accompagne tout cela et comment la mobilisation féministe est perçue comme une menace. Oh. Ouais. Elle a parlé avec pertinence des stratégies de remise en question des structures patriarcales par les jeunes féministes qu'elle a mentionnées, qui sont là dans la salle et qui sont la relève, professeur. Donc soyez rassurés, la mobilisation, elle est lancée et je pense que les femmes vont faire face. Maintenant, le feront-elles seules? Le feront-elles accompagnées? Il paraît qu'il ne faut pas y croire. Mais l'engagement est là. L'engagement est là. Maram, vraiment, il faut arrêter. Ouais. Et j'aurais, moi, peut-être juste... une question, je ne vais pas revenir sur voilà, le contexte de la culture de violence dont elle a parlé et ce qu'elle a appelé la maladie sociale la plus menaçante dans notre société, cette violence. Elle a évoqué les différentes institutions, la famille, la religion, l'État, les hommes et aussi les femmes, les pygmées, donc, qui soutiennent le patriarcat et qui reproduisent effectivement tous les travers et participent à la violence. La seule question que moi j'aimerais vous poser, c'est comment nous humaniser davantage, individuellement, déjà nous, femmes, personnellement, entre nous aussi. La sororité que nous devons avoir d'abord, pour ensuite et ensemble construire une capacité à amener nos États aux soins dont elle a parlé, au bien-être dont Pendant a parlé, dont Fatou a parlé, pour que l'humain soit au centre des politiques publiques. Parce que je pense que seuls aussi, difficilement nous arriverons à bout du patriarcat. Déjà, nous sommes sur la voie. Il faut amener les autres acteurs avec qui nous sommes à être avec nous.
Merci. Dans la session précédente, on avait demandé comment est-ce que le patriarcat se nourrit. et le patriarcat se nourrit de la chair des femmes, du savoir des femmes, de la labeur féminine. Et souvent, nous sommes aussi ceux qui leur donnent cette matière à consommer en tant que femmes. So as women, we actually provide this meat for patriarchy in many, many forms. And patriarchy is very gluttonous, so that's why it's never going to feel satiated. So it's always going to devour and eat. Et je voulais aussi parler du fait que la sororité est aussi quelque part un concept qui est utilisé, qui est imposé aux femmes pour nous dire que nous devons être solidaires les unes les autres, alors que certaines d'entre nous ne font pas le travail de la sororité. Et qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec ces personnes-là, ces femmes qui ne sont pas solidaires ou bien qui prônent la solidarité, la sororité, mais souvent elles sont dans le sous-sol du patriarcat en train de préparer, comment on appelle, la tuerie générale des féministes. I'm sorry. Je m'excuse de vous faire rire. OK. Donc, comment nous humaniser? Je crois que ça commence par une volonté individuelle de résister, de vivre d'abord, avant d'être en coalition avec les autres. Parce que tant qu'on ne fait pas ce travail individuel de s'humaniser nous-mêmes, on ne peut pas être humain entre nous. Time is a problem for us. Donc, peut-être qu'on peut prendre 2 questions. Vous nous devez ça quand même. Parce qu'on a attendu, et c'est féministe aussi de s'imposer. Je vais prendre 2 questions.
Bon, bah, super. Bon, bah, écoute.
On prend 2. On prend 2. Parce que maintenant, on vous a donné notre temps. Il fait 1h30.
C'est le prof qui nous avait dit on arrête tout.
Seulement 2 et 5 minutes. Je pense que le temps...
Les hommes n'ont pas droit aux questions.
Alors là... Vous n'avez pas le droit d'être d'accord. Non, 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 attends. On va prendre rapidement parce qu'on est contraint par le temps. Vous aviez levé la main? Vous pouvez prendre la parole. Non, elle. Non, je lui donne pas. Elle. Ça marche?
C'est la marche. Ça marche. Vous allez nous passer ça après.
D'abord, merci pour cette prise de parole extraordinaire, parce que la question du cannibalisme, qui a souvent été, je le rappelle, depuis Montaigne, les sauvages, c'était ceux qui consommaient de la chair humaine, et les colons venaient d'essensophager en fait les colonisés. Et on voit bien qu'en réalité, le cannibalisme est partout. Il est surtout, pour moi, patriarcal et capitaliste. Et je pense justement, je voulais vous poser cette question, en rapport aussi avec la leçon de ce matin, sur, d'abord, d'une part, la refétichisation de certaines de nos pratiques, c'est-à-dire au fond la capacité à mettre en place de nouveaux totems. Et je pense que un des enjeux en fait du féminisme africain contemporain, c'est dans la lignée de cet hommage à Fatou Sow, c'est d'installer des figures tutélaires de la lutte féministe sur le continent en fait, et d'en faire des éléments fondateurs du matrimoine africain, pour pouvoir justement ancrer les jeunes générations dans une prise de conscience historique et durable de ces luttes parce que ce qui manque justement et ce qui fragilise les générations à chaque fois, c'est de recommencer le combat comme s'il n'avait jamais été mené. Or c'est un combat qui est ancien et dans lequel des femmes ont déjà produit, se sont illustrées et ont gagné. En fait, il y a des conquêtes du féminisme et je pense que un des enjeux du matrimoine, c'est précisément de les mettre en valeur et de les diffuser largement pour que les nouvelles générations de jeunes gens et de jeunes filles soient conscients en fait de ce patrimoine ou de ce matrimoine universel. La question, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, les luttes féministes, eh bien, elles ne sont enseignées qu'aux femmes, quand elles sont enseignées, c'est-à-dire très faiblement. Et je me demandais dans quelle mesure nous n'aurions pas aussi comme tâche, en fait, à redéfinir les contenus des savoirs, de manière, je n'ai pas à refaire tout le travail, et que les jeunes gens, autant que les jeunes filles, en fait, soient conscients des enjeux dévastateurs, en fait, du patriarcat dans la construction de sociétés du soin, celle que nous appelons de nos voeux et de démocratie du soin sur le continent. Merci. C'est comment on fait.
Comment on fait? Alors, je suis d'accord que on a l'impression de réinventer la roue, comme on dit, de tourner autour. Mais je crois que cette génération de féministes a pu réaliser que nous sommes... We are over the shoulders of giants who have done the work, and they're right here in front of us. And it is because we have had people like Fatou Sow, like Kodubob, who are willing to come to us as younger generation of feminists and remind us of the foundation that they had built before our arrival. So there is constant conversation between them that is happening now that was not happening before. But I think that I wanted to talk about individually, what do we do as feminists to really get out of this mess where we are? And I think what we don't talk about enough is how we educate men in our household and how we make them conscious that they are the victims of patriarchy as much as we are. Because patriarchy removes their humanity for them. It feels comfortable because I think that they are in a trance-like condition where they're enjoying the privileges of patriarchy without being aware of the damages that patriarchy does to them. They don't have any idea of how much they're missing in their humanity by embracing and stubbornly clinging to the privileges of patriarchy.
Merci beaucoup. Je pense qu'elle a posé vraiment une question très importante. Je pense que la prise de conscience, elle est centrale parce que tant que les féministes restent une minorité, je pense qu'on n'est pas proche de la solution. Comment maintenant allons-nous faire pour que la masse critique de féministes, mais écoute, s'élargisse, que ça ne nous concerne pas seulement nous les femmes, mais aussi les hommes et les autres acteurs, l'État. Sinon, le bout du tunnel, il va être encore trop loin.
Je m'excuse. Mais quand on dit les hommes, ça ne veut pas dire que nous allons faire le travail de déconstruction pour vous. Lisez les féministes, venez là où on parle et écoutez au lieu de vouloir prendre la parole pour vous défendre.
Exactement, c'est dans ce sens-là. Je pense qu'on va remercier encore Maram pour cette brillante communication. Oh voilà, donc merci beaucoup. Et
merci à tous. Merci à tous. On va pouvoir aller déjeuner. À 14h30, on va devoir reprendre. On est un peu serré à cause du temps. À 14h30. Merci.
Oh, di Pendant. Africain, oh liberté. Oh, kata toni pasi, soki na kata. nakoka te. Basusu oyo naponaka bawel bokonzi mpe na bavwatili yo. Bavoti tango ekomaka ngai nakomi moto mpona bango.
N'hésitez pas à vous diriger rapidement vers la restauration, s'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît, on doit reprendre à 14h30 précise pour tenir le timing. Merci.
Africain, oh di Pendant. Africain, Africain, oh liberté. Oh kata koni pasi, soki nakati oteka pasi. Na pasi oyo ya boye ngai napana mawa nakoka te. Basusu oyo naponaka bawela bokonzi mpe na bavwatili yo. Bavoti tango ekomaka ngai nakomi moto mpona bango. Nakomi tuna mondele akende lipanda totuaka oya nani ye Afrika e. Africa, oh, di Pendant. nakoka te.